I did apply and I got rejected the first time, and I was mortified and humiliated and, like, oh my God, this is it. My chance is over. And then a year later, they reached out to me.
Podcasting is hard, so why not get a little coaching? Welcome to Podcast Coaching with Christine. I'm your host, Christine O'Donnell. I'm an Emmy-nominated TV journalist and podcast coach. Each week, I interview someone who has an exceptional story and talent to help independent podcasters grow their shows. What do you think about the new music? Do you love it? Hi, welcome back to another episode. And if you have ever wanted to be a TEDx speaker, this guest is giving away some insider secrets. If you're someone who someday wants to own your own office space with, your name on the door and everything, yeah, this is the episode for you. And lastly, if you are someone who would like to raise awareness for an important cause with your podcast while growing your show, this episode really dives into that because we actually do talk about some sensitive issues. Not only is May Mental Health Awareness Month, but it is also Foster Care Awareness Month. And one of the issues that you may be aware of that is happening in our society is, of course, human trafficking. Foster care children tend to be more vulnerable to falling into this trap. And we do talk about that in this episode. So it is a little bit different than past episodes, but there is so much wonderful, valuable information here. And before we dive into it, I wanted to do one more thing. And that thing is let you know that I've started something new. If you are someone who's been doing this with me, hi, I hope you're having an awesome day. Thank you for listening. But, hey, Ava. Ava, my daughter, is here with me. She's just 9 months. So what I was going to say is I have now a membership community, a community of podcasters who I work with on a regular basis to help them get more downloads, get more reviews, and find more opportunities to monetize. But even more than that, it's just sometimes so great to connect with a community of podcasters and just have a real good vent session. Because, like we talk about just at the beginning of the show, podcasting is hard. And if you've been doing it for a while, you know that. Anyway, if you'd like more information, feel free to shoot me a DM on Instagram. That's where I spend most of my time. And my Insta handle is @TheChristineOD. So now that's out of the way, let's dive into this week's interview. On today's show, I am interviewing a TEDx speaker and podcaster whose mission is to empower women to support foster youth and sex trafficking survivors through beauty. Arzo Yusuf is the host of the Sexy Boss Babe podcast about female-centric topics. She uses her podcast to build a community of strong women going after what they want in life. Yes! Sexy Boss Babe is also a beauty brand with the social impact mission of helping foster youth and sex trafficking survivors. Arzo hopes that women can find empowerment in their own lives and help this marginalized demographic through supporting Sexy Boss Babe's mission. Arzo, welcome to the show.
Christine, thank you so much. And that was probably like the most perfect introduction I think that any podcaster has given me. Seriously, you hit everything.
Well, thank you.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, for being here with me today. And, I don't normally talk about human trafficking on this podcast, but it is something that I care a lot about. And for people who have been following my journey as a reporter, you know this. I've covered a number of human trafficking stories throughout my career as a journalist, one of which became a very big I don't even know how to describe it. A story that like won't let me go. Something I still follow. So victims of this trafficker continue to reach out to me today. So I continue to follow the story. And so I'm incredibly interested in what you're doing and how you're doing it. And the fact that you're also a speaker and a podcaster is absolutely wonderful. So could you tell me a little bit about how did you get started?
With podcasting or with this mission?
Let's start with the mission.
Okay. So, I started, I didn't know anything about really sex trafficking. I didn't know anything about foster care. And I got involved with a nonprofit called Angel's Nest, helping former foster youth. And through that work, I became board president and just really just dove in and got to know a lot of the youth. And their story was eye-opening. The story of foster youth was eye-opening. And there's a link to sex trafficking. And that was shocking to me. So once I kind of put all those pieces together and I realized, whoa, I didn't know about this. And I don't think a lot of people know about this. And I don't think most people know there's a link. So that really grabbed me. I did that work for a few years. And then I was kind of in this crossroads in my career. I was looking to start a business. And then this whole idea for Sexy Boss Babe came up. It's this little beauty brand of little quick nails you can put on. Really fun. But I've always been a like a social mission driven person. And so if I was going to have a business or something, I wanted to include some type of social good. And because of the work that I did with Angel's Nest, I was really passionate about this. And I thought, it'd be interesting because mainstream doesn't know that this is happening. People that work with foster youth or people that are social workers all know what's going on, but the general public doesn't know. So how can you make this palatable for the general public? So I thought it'd be interesting to use the beauty brand as a platform, a way to reach a lot of women and share this message. So on the packaging, there's actual statistics on the packaging. So even if you buy a box, you can learn about what's going on. And then a portion of our proceeds are donated to charities that help this demographic. We do workshops. We donate the nails to youth, to foster youth, and to sex trafficking survivors. And sometimes people ask, well, that doesn't make sense, or why do they need that? But there's a statistic that talks about how traffickers use nail services as a way to lure youth. It's a big thing. It's a way that they kind of create trust and bond. So by us giving them these little nails, it's a way for prevention. I know that was a lot.
It just like pulls up this rage inside me that
Good. I like when people tell me that.
Like it just won't quit, this rage. So
Yes.
I'm laughing, but I'm laughing
Yeah.
through the anger
Yeah.
over the fact that people are victimizing children
Yes.
as victims in human sex trafficking. And I think one of the most surprising things for me, especially when I talk to people about it, is human trafficking looks a lot different than many people think that it does. So how would you describe it?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of people, when you hear the word sex trafficking or human trafficking, people always think of like a third world country. You think of like Vietnam or something, and there's kidnapping and all that kind of stuff. And the thing about, well, one, human trafficking is like this big umbrella that like labor trafficking exists underneath it, and sex trafficking, all these other things. So sex trafficking is it's a sub part of human trafficking, and it's different. How it happens is different in different parts of the world. So how sex trafficking happens in America is different than how it would happen in another country. How it happens in Los Angeles is a little different than how it happens in Tennessee. So every region is also a little bit different. What gangs are involved, or what the system is that kind of controls it. It depends on the crime syndicates in those areas and who kind of controls it, how they go about it. So in certain areas where there are state lines, a lot of times they will take kids over state lines and get them out to a different state. That's it. A lot of times when that happens, like it's almost virtually impossible for that kid to be found again. Here in Los Angeles, for example, we are one of the largest hubs for sex trafficking in all of the United States. And that's something that's shocking to a lot of people. Most people don't realize it. Van Nuys is like one of the biggest areas. And we have the most kids in foster care in LA than anywhere else in America. So it's just, they're the most vulnerable, and that's why they get targeted. So those are, a couple of the things.
Something that I found just kind of surprisingly shocking is that so many victims they go to their traffickers. They seek the traffickers. The traffickers know how to lure children to them. And I mean, you mentioned nails being one way, like nail salons. So this one case that I've been following, this guy used social media and specifically tattoos. So kids who were interested in getting tattoos by this super fancy Instagram person who has all of these followers, he creates these really like intricate tattoos. And once they go to him, it's just kind of like not what they were expecting. And and it's happening like everywhere. It's not just foster youth. It's any child that feels vulnerable, that feels insecure, that feels unloved, that feels lonely, who all of a sudden gets this gratification and attention through Instagram from somebody who has this credibility that they are craving. And then also like now they don't feel so lonely and they feel special and they feel cared about. And then all of a sudden they show up expecting like to be treated so fancy, and they do for a second and then it just changes. And anyway, it makes me really angry. So I'm so glad that you have found a way to creatively raise awareness about this and also give back.
Thank you. Yeah, it's hard, and it's a hard topic. It's an uncomfortable topic for people. No, people don't want to think about it, and it's like this is a way to just help if you're not able to do the other stuff. You know what I mean? Getting involved to be a CASA or a mentor to a foster youth, and like you said, it doesn't only affect foster youth. It affects it. Any youth that is, just like you said, insecure, lonely, maybe being abused, whatever it is, those are the ones that become vulnerable. And the reason why I focus on foster care so much is because you just have that prevalence so much in that demographic. But absolutely, like, and that's the thing, is I always tell people too that kids need love, affection, and care. And the more we can give that to them through mentorship, through providing safe adult relationships, we're doing a huge responsibility or something that can help with prevention from them becoming at risk to this.
Yeah. And something that I just find, I think that it's going to be really interesting to podcasters who are listening to this, is you have found a way, because so many podcasters that I work with like want to podcast because they want to make an impact.
Yes.
Like, they want to make a difference, and you've found a way to make a difference through like your story and your podcast and what you're doing in your business, but also in a way that it gives back and it raises awareness about something.
Yeah.
If someone else out there is looking to do that, like where would you suggest they get started?
So thanks for that question. I think it's a great question. And it's one of the reasons why I love doing the podcast. It does allow me to share about that information. And people that podcast community. Podcasters are a different breed of people. They're the doers and the shakers, I think, of community. They are the people that really know how to execute. And especially the ones that have really stuck it out and they're building their podcast. And if you have a platform, having a podcast, you have a platform now. So you have that ability to, through your voice, through your passion, connect with people. And people that are podcasting, like you said, want to make a difference, right? So think about that. There's so many things in the world, there's so many things that are going wrong everywhere in so many different areas. So the first thing is, take your time. Don't overwhelm yourself with a million things, but figure out what is that thing that you're super passionate about. Take time to figure that out. Maybe do some volunteer work with a couple different things until you figure that out. Once you kind of know, pick one thing, because making an impact is really hard. It takes a lot of work, a lot of focus, and a lot of dedication. So if you're doing a million things, it can be hard to see the impact, and then you kind of get burned out and you're like, oh, I'm doing all this stuff and no one's paying attention. But if you pick one thing and just focus on that one thing, and talk about it, have episodes on it. Like I've had episodes on this stuff where I raise awareness. I also do a little commercial. I do a little ad for Sexy Boss Babe in the beginning. So before an episode comes up, you get a little ad for Sexy Boss Babe, and it talks about the product, but then it talks about that statistic and what happens to foster youth and sex trafficking. So anytime someone listens to that episode, they're going to listen to that ad and they're going to be able to hear that little statistic. So I hope over time, more and more people kind of, learn. So definitely those are a couple of ways, throwing a little ad in there. And, for example, it's Foster Care Awareness Month right now, the month of May. We've got a campaign called the 1 Box Equals 1 Meal campaign. So anytime someone buys a box of Sexy Boss Babe quick meals, we donate a meal to transition age foster youth. So that is talked about in every episode, especially right now. So again, and then I'll share little tidbits about that demographic. So, I mean, that's a way.
Yeah. And I also think this is a way to spread, like, to grow your show.
Yeah.
By showing up for other people, you're also like getting more people. Like, I'm trying to say this in a way that doesn't sound selfish, because all of a sudden, like, it sounds like we were talking about giving back, but also it can help you to give back. Like, it can help. Who does this? I interviewed someone who works for Kendra Scott on this show, and she was talking about how Kendra has literally built her business by giving
Mm-hmm.
back to people,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
built through service. And I
Yeah.
think that is something that is just so wonderful, like this idea where you can build through serving others. So like, you don't actually have to feel bad. Like I feel like I'm personally like navigating, like, how do I talk about this without sounding bad? But it's not bad to serve others
No,
and
I think it's
also
really
grow
great.
your show.
No, I think it's really great. And, I would say this when I was working on the board of Angel's Nest, like at the end of the day, I don't care if someone does it for selfish reasons or not, because they're giving back, So even if it's, it's in a perfect world, it's not selfishly motivated, but hey, you know what? People are people and it is what it is. But if you're going to give back, just give back. I don't care what your reason is. but, but at the end of the day, like, we're so like, we're in this part, I think, of society right now where capitalism is the enemy and everybody hates capitalism. And it's like, why? And, we need to tear this down and everything. And there are a lot of selfish companies, and there are, companies have typically existed, literally, a corporation has existed for the sole reason of creating profit for shareholders, right? That's the number one priority. That is starting to change. So there's a lot of CEOs now that are like, no, that's not right. And that is not going to be our number one priority anymore. And so they're taking other things into account, like how they treat their employees or what are their give back models and things like that. So as entrepreneurs or as creators, right? Podcasters are creators. You can create businesses that give back or has some element of social good. And I think that is the evolution. And I think there's an opportunity for more people to do it. And definitely don't feel bad about it. We all have to eat. We all have to put food on the table. We all have to do something to make a living, right? So we can go work for somebody and make a living that way. Or we can create something that we're doing through our podcast or through our other side business, where we're creating revenue streams for ourselves, but we're doing something that is creating good in the community. So why not? There's no reason to feel bad about that.
So yeah, I'd love to talk about this a little bit more, because recently, so I have a community of podcasters who I work with them on a regular basis to just grow their shows. And there's this one podcaster, she has this amazing show. I hope she doesn't mind me shouting her out, but her name is India Whitkin, and her show is called Eating America with India. And it's a monthly podcast, and she like brings you into other people's culture. It kind of like reminds me of like an Anthony Bourdain style documentary, only it's a podcast. And she's got this amazing way of storytelling and interviewing the chefs and talking about the eating experience and the taste of the food and the history behind it. And something we were talking about together is, what if during this time with her podcast, she was also able to raise funds and raise awareness for businesses, restaurants who are struggling
Mm-hmm.
because of the pandemic. because they
Yes.
haven't been able to stay open, or at least in the way that they would have. They wouldn't. So that there have been real issues with restaurants. And so one of the things we did is we would work together to find like what are some charities that are actually legitimate that maybe she could collaborate with to raise awareness with in her show. And now that's part of how she publishes her episodes with an ad. And
That's really cool. That's really, really cool. So she does that ad too. So she'll put an ad and like talk about how what people can do, a call to action, really.
Call to action in the show notes, also on her website and all of that. So
I love it. I love it.
yeah,
That's great.
she's new to it too. So I think that anytime you can perhaps incorporate something like that is just it's a feel good thing to actually help you grow your show and to serve the world. No big deal.
I love it. And it gives me more hope in humanity. When I see those kinds of things and I hear those stories and stuff, it's like, wow, there are people out there that want to do good, and it's like we have a chance.
Oh,
Humanity has a chance.
So I'd love to talk more about your business and your podcast. Do you think of them as two separate things, or how do you incorporate, like, how does that work for you, and how do you manage your time? How do you make it happen?
Yeah, so I don't think of them as two separate things. They are not one and the same, but it is the part of the brand and the part of the community. So when I had come up with the concept for Sexy Boss Babe, it didn't start as the podcast. The concept started first as the beauty company. And then as that was developing, which takes, anytime you have an idea, you think you're going to launch something in 2 months or 3 months, it takes a lot longer than that. So it took almost a year before we were able to get production and everything. So it was probably about 3 months before we actually launched Sexy Boss Babe. I started doing Instagram posts and things like that. And then I thought, well, this whole brand idea is about community, and it's about women, and the brand is about women empowerment. Yes, there are words on our packaging that states those things, but how can I create a feeling and emotion with other women? So podcasting was something that popped into my head. I thought, you know what? I speak and I like to talk about topics and I like to teach and all these different things. So maybe this could be something I could incorporate. So I launched the podcast before we actually released our product. And, everything was consistent, Sexy Boss Babe. And that's kind of how it started. And I did the first year was very random for me because I'm not like you, I'm not trained in media. So it was a little bit different. And I just kind of threw episodes out there with no rhyme or reason. The first year I did about 12 episodes with no consistency. And it was a good test run. I stayed on brand. We talked about female-centric topics. I did a few interviews, and that was interesting and fun. And people were reaching out to me saying that they really liked the show. And then I didn't know if I was going to continue it, but I really enjoyed it. I got great feedback. So I decided, you know what, we're going to move into a season model. So those first 12 episodes of season 1, and now we're going to start with season 2. And then season 2 ended up being a little bit more produced and more structured, and it had a game plan. And then same thing with season 3. So, it's been great, and it's been a really great way to just deepen that connection with the community of women.
Yeah. So what kind of feedback have you received now that you have both the podcast and your business, or how has your podcast served your business?
Yeah. So it definitely helps people understand the brand better. And as a female-centric brand, sometimes it can be it can be difficult for people to understand that just from looking at the product. But what it does is it brings you into our ecosystem. And once you're in the ecosystem, everything makes sense. It's like, oh, okay, I'm getting empowerment information on, different tips, or, bringing other experts in that can teach the community of women something that they might not know, or inspire them, or, whatnot. And then everything just kind of circles back into each other. So, and then through the podcast, they get to know about Sexy Boss Babe, that there's this other, beauty brand that exists. And then people go to the website and purchase products. And then they also know that, they're helping this demographic of foster youth. And so it's this kind of like feel good thing. So, women like beauty products. It's kind of a part of our lives. And people are going to go buy beauty products anyways. Why not buy or invest in a beauty product that is doing something good for this really marginalized demographic? So you're just getting knowledge, you're getting empowerment, you're looking and feeling great. So it's all the great things for women.
Something I found myself thinking about, maybe this is a weird thing to ask, but with your brand being called Sexy Boss Babe, and you're also raising awareness about what's happening to foster youth and sex trafficking victims, did you ever feel like the brand name and your mission weren't compatible? Or
so that's a great
ever
question.
any do you know
Absolutely.
what I mean? Okay.
Yes. So that's a great question. And I do get asked about this. And I had this conversation with a friend of mine recently. So again, at first glance, it's like, wait, what is this? Which is kind of good because it's going to trigger you. And if you're triggered, there's an emotional reaction. If there's emotional reaction, maybe you'll do a little bit of a deeper dive. If you do a deeper dive and if you understand the community, we've redefined what a sexy boss babe is, because sexy has always typically been, what your physical appearance is. It's skin deep. And that's not what sexy boss babe is. The whole definition is being redefined. So on the side of the box, you get a definition of what sexy boss babe is. And a sexy boss babe is a breed of woman that is confident from the inside out. She can be curvy, plus size, thin, athletic, tall, short, any size, shape, or color. Her beauty comes from knowing her self-worth and what she deserves. She goes after what she wants in life. She's fierce, bold, and empowered.
I love it. So good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I feel like I want that on a wall in front of me. Maybe have some sell posters. I really love your mission, and I love that definition. And something that actually triggered me when I was kind of like putting them back and forth, because I have done so much reporting on this, is this idea of, after someone is a victim of sex trafficking, will they ever feel comfortable having sex again? Will that ever make them feel good, empowered? I mean, it's an uncomfortable thing kind of to talk about, and also not something I normally talk about here on this podcast, but something I hear from victims, from their parents, is like, I have relationship problems now. Like, I can't sustain a relationship because I don't feel comfortable with this sexual side of myself anymore. And so, and I think anytime this, someone gets I was just talking to someone the other day about, these guys were flirting with her in a way that was kind of aggressive, and she felt very uncomfortable and left, which is but it's like this idea of actually owning your sexiness for how it makes you feel, not how it makes somebody else feel. I think is so important. And I think that there's there's this missing link sometimes when it comes to having that conversation of what happens after. If you're a survivor of human trafficking, will you ever have a healthy sexual relationship again?
So, I mean, I think, I think it's definitely on a case-by-case basis, because someone might have gone into it when they're a little bit older, and maybe they weren't a virgin at the time when they went into it. I mean, this is so specific, Others, they went into it when they're very young, and their first sexual experience was this. So they're going to be probably traumatized for the rest of their life. And so we work with different types of charities. We work with foster youth charities, but we also partner with charities that rescue women out of sex trafficking. One of those is Journey Out. They're based in Los Angeles. And so they provide lots of different services, and counseling and therapy is a huge part of the healing process, and they need to go through that. And Will some of them ever regain their sex life? I don't know. Some might not. Some might be traumatized forever, and some might be okay. So it's not necessarily a blanket answer, but the healing process on every level, it's going to take a lot of time, and unfortunately, a lot of women that have gone through this fall back into it. So even if they are rescued or removed, it's something that they end up falling back into. So it's a difficult thing, and that's why I think we really focus on the prevention aspect. And even with the advocacy, a lot of my advocacy is focused on prevention, and the prevention is providing support for foster youth because they're the most at risk, they're the most vulnerable. So if we focus on this demographic, give them support, love, attention, care, hopefully they'll never go that route, because once they go that route, it's just it's too hard. It's too hard.
Yeah.
You're asking great questions, Christine. Great questions.
Thanks, Arzo. Something that totally inspires me about you is something we started talking about when we first jumped on the good old Zoom that we're on right now, is that you've got your own office space. Like, you are a boss babe. Like, you are owning it. You've got your own place. You like, could you tell me a little bit more about your business, how your business works, and how you manage it all? It seems like it's a dream of mine to have my own office space someday.
You know, I started in my, apartment, and I literally would just, like, you guys don't even know. Oh my gosh, I've recorded some of it. I haven't released all of the recordings. It just, I mean, I have picked up my own shipments from like the port, I mean, the logistics, I mean, all of it, organizing, having shelving in the apartment and just having inventory there. And I have the experience because I've done product distribution and stuff in a job setting. So I didn't come into it blind. Like, I had experience doing it. I just was for myself. And as a small business, you have to be very cost conscious. And I think a lot of small businesses end up starting to get the office space first when they get the business idea, and you shouldn't do that. If you've got lots of money, hey, some people get investors right off the bat and you've got millions of dollars, yes, then it makes sense. But if you're just a small entrepreneur and just starting out and you've got a limited budget, whatever amount of money you think that you need to start a business, you're going to need 3 times more than that, 5 times more than that, 10 times more than that. So being cost conscious is really important. So I was in my apartment for a really, really long time, running the business. It got to the point where, we're expanding and there's a lot of things going on. So I need to kind of have a little dedicated space. So I finally made that transition, and even making that transition, I was really cost conscious when I was looking for lease spaces and making sure I got a good deal. And even whatever they offered me, I negotiated what the rent was and everything to bring everything down. So I'm there now and just kind of organizing the office space. But it is exciting for me, just like you said, as a boss babe or whatever, it's exciting. I walk into the office building, I'm like, I've got an office here. This is like really cool.
Yes, that is. And how, I mean, and even at least something that I have found, and I could be projecting here, is that whenever there's like a moment of growth, or when I like see like the puzzle pieces coming together and all of a sudden things starting to happen,
Mm-hmm.
there is this like moment where I'm ready to self-sabotage. I am like, I'm ready to run the other way. I'm like, what was I thinking? This is a bad
Yes.
idea.
Oh yeah. Oh
Has
yeah.
that happened for you?
100%. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Okay. So first of all, I got this office space in Century City. Okay. There's a lot of power players in Century City. The moment everything got settled and situated, all of a sudden the fear came over me, and I'm like, WTF, who do you think you are being here? Okay, like, what? Go back to your apartment, And so those voices definitely come up. That's just natural. It's just a natural part of being human. But what are you going to do with that voice? And so, yes, there's 2 little corridors. You either listen to the voice and bow out and, stay fear-based and stay small, Or you kind of grab that little voice and be like, no, MF, you be quiet. I deserve to be here. And then you kind of have to silence that voice and then follow that joy and that excitement that you were talking about, you know, that missing piece that came together and you got so excited and everything. That's the feeling. That's the truth. Follow that.
Yeah.
So you have to
So
consciously
hard.
do it though.
So hard to do that. I
It's hard.
might like this is going to be like a super TMI moment. Yay. um but so last night I struggled to sleep. I was telling you about this because my daughter was just up a lot nursing, and anyway, we have a 3-year-old. I'm not getting a lot of sleep these days. But there was a moment where I fell asleep, um, I think around 1 o'clock. and my husband had to wake up at 3 o'clock to because he has to go to work. He works for the local news, one of the local news stations out here. And he and when I woke up or like was talking my sleep and I was saying what was I saying? Oh, God, I can't even remember anymore. Gosh, darn it. Now I can't even share my TMI moment.
It
But
was something funny.
it was important. And it's, oh, I was saying it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay over and
Yeah.
over and over again. And he asked me, he said, why are you saying that? Cause like I had woken him up and him asking me why I was saying that, like brought me enough out of sleep for me to actually like understand what was happening. And what
Uh-huh.
happens sometimes when I'm like in between this like awake and sleep state, I like think back about my business and what's going on and like the good stuff, the bad stuff, the decisions I might have made that were maybe the wrong ones or not the right, like I just, all of this self-doubt, I feel like I work through it in my sleep somehow. And I just like, I don't know. I tell myself it's going to be okay.
I know. I
In
know.
sleep,
I know.
which may be just like a crazy thing that is hopefully not just well, maybe it's just happening to me, but it does, it happens to me. My husband's like, why do you keep saying this? Because I guess I say it a lot and I never respond to him when he asks me, but this time I did, and that's why I remember it, because it brought me out of the moment. um so
That's good. And I think a lot of us feel the way that you feel. You know, we're constantly questioning ourselves. We want to make sure we're excited. We're overcoming those fears and everything. But you know, I love that in your sleep you're like it's gonna be okay. You're giving yourself that reassurance. I think that's so cute and awesome.
go away, little voice. It's gonna be okay. I know that you're messing with my brain right now, but it's gonna be okay. Um, Something I know that my audience is going to be so curious about, Arzo, is your experience as a speaker. I think one of the best ways to make an impact and to grow your show is to get on stage. And as someone who's spoken at TED, what was that process like? How was the experience? And have you seen it? What have you seen it do for you?
So it definitely helps you kind of become a little bit more established as an expert in something. So it definitely helps in that. And it's interesting because I had a reason why I wanted to give this TEDx talk. And there are a lot of people that have that idea or that goal. And I think it's one thing to just do it, but it's another if it's part of a bigger plan. And so mine was part of a bigger plan. So it's something that helps me. It's going to help me. It is helping me, and it's going to help me with the other things. But I'll tell you kind of just a little bit about the background. One, I was a child stutterer, so I had a period of my life where my parents were going through divorce and all these things. So sometimes kids experience their emotions in different ways. So I stuttered a lot. I didn't even want to talk a lot of times when I was a kid. If attention came on to me, it would freak me out and I just would shut down. I did go to speech therapy when I was younger. It helped. I came up with little coping mechanisms on how to deal with the stuttering, and it got better over the years. I still stutter sometimes. It will come up, but I find ways to kind of work through it. And I used to, the fear of it used to hold me back a lot, and it doesn't anymore. I just get past it. Whatever it is, what it is. And then I started doing Toastmasters about, gosh, I want to say almost 15 years ago, 13 years ago, probably. I started doing Toastmasters, and they have them. It's an international organization. They have them all over the world. So I joined that, and I've been doing it on and off for that time. So sometimes I'll go for a year, 2 years, and then I take a break or whatever. But that's really helped me. And so they give you a couple booklets, and then you have speeches to prepare, and then you stand up in front of your group there, and sometimes it's 10 people, sometimes it's 30 people, and you give your speech, 5 or 10 minute speech. It's scary, and you make a lot of mistakes as you go through the process, but you're in a positive environment, so people give you great feedback on how to speak better, or hey, you're doing a lot of ums, or you spoke too fast. I'm a hand person, so this has gotten better over the years, because when you are a public speaker, there are ways to use your hands to engage the audience as opposed to distract them. So you learn all of these things through Toastmasters, which is great. And you can always get a speech coach or a public speaking coach, but Toastmasters is great. It's a little bit of a longer process. Anyways, so I finally started to kind of feel confident in that I think I can be on a TEDx stage and give a talk. And then what do you want to talk about? Because of my platform and the brand and the advocacy work that I'm doing, for me, again, not enough people know about the link between foster care and sex trafficking. So for me, it was a no-brainer, and that was going to be my topic. I did apply, and I got rejected the first time, and I was mortified, humiliated, and like, oh my God, this is it, my chance is over. And then a year later, they reached out to me, and I had gotten to know some of the organizers and through social media. And so, I think you can kind of get to know people a little bit on social media, on the different social media platforms. And so I think, through that time, she reached back out to me, and she was like, if you would like to try again, this might be a good time. So I resubmitted, and I got accepted. And then we went through that process, and definitely one of the most memorable things I've ever done. And it's definitely helped me in different areas, for sure.
Who was it? Who'd you talk to?
Elena Ferguson. And in every city, they have, look up TEDx's in the different cities, and you can figure out who the organizer is. So if you're in East Coast or wherever you are, figure out who the organizer is and just reach out to the organizer. So for us, it was TEDx Delthorn Women, and it was Elena Ferguson. And she's amazing. And she became an organizer because she gave a TEDx talk, and whoever was organizing hers did a horrible job, and they didn't film it right. It was just this horrible thing. So she ended up hiring her own production crew to come and film hers, and did that, offered it for other people. And then it inspired her to start her own TEDx venue. So, and then she has this great venue now that she does for all these really, really great, amazing. We've got really great, amazing women that have been giving TEDx talks through Delthorn.
Wow. So what was your biggest takeaway from that experience?
My biggest takeaway, I guess there's a few takeaways, but speak from the heart, and take in the experience, I guess. And I don't know. What's my biggest takeaway? I think I'm happy that I did it, and it's helped me get other opportunities to speak about this topic. So it's opened up doorways, I think.
What did you tell yourself right before you walked out on stage?
I wanted to be calm and in my element, because when you're practicing at home and then when you get up on the stage, it's very different. And so you're not nervous at home, but when you're on the stage, you can get nervous. So I had a plan beforehand. And so I made sure that I had a great little routine, my morning routine, so that I wasn't nervous. I did my routine, and I felt really good. I had practiced and everything. And then when I got there, I took a few deep breaths. I got on the stage about 5 or 10 minutes before I was going to be filmed, and I walked around the stage, and I spread my arms out, and I kind of spread my energy through the stage so it can be mine. And doing that made me feel very centered and calm, and then I was able to speak. And I was more calm than what I thought I would be. I thought I was going to be really nervous and mess up a lot, and I didn't. And I think it's because of that routine.
Ooh. Were there a lot of people in the crowd?
So because we did our TEDx talks during the pandemic, yes, it was different. So we had a different protocol. And so it was the production crew, the other speakers, and the event coordinators. So we didn't have a crowd, which that also makes it different. But even just being on stage and being filmed, as a journalist, you're more used to it. So, it's probably a little bit more, it's easier, but, regardless, and that this talk is going to be put on the TED website, on both the TEDx and the TED website. And, people are going to see this. And we did have, it was produced, and then we had a live event where people purchased tickets. So we did have friends and family that purchased tickets, and then we watched it via a platform like this, quote unquote live for the first time.
Awesome. I love that idea of walking out onto the stage with or without an audience to just kind of like make the stage yours before you start.
Yes.
So you don't feel like you're in someone else's space. Your space.
Yeah.
It's
yours.
This has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you for indulging in all of my curious questions. Is there anything else you'd like to share that I didn't ask you?
No, you asked some really great questions. This was awesome. No, I loved it. I love my time with you. This was great. I think we talked about everything. I hope people enjoy this conversation. And if anyone wants to stay in touch with me, I have a personal website, arzoyusuf.com. Would love to hear from you guys.
Wonderful. And I will link that for everyone listening in the show notes. Thank you, Arzo, again for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Christine, for having me. Have a great day.
You too.
And that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to another episode of Podcast Coaching with Christine. For more information on this week's episode, be sure to check the show notes. You can also find more information on my website, Christine-O'Donnell.com. There's a bunch of resources over there as well, and more information about my community if you would like to join it. Again, that's Christine-O'Donnell.com. If this podcast helped you in any way, please let me know. You can always screenshot that you've listened to this episode and then share it in your stories and tag me on Instagram. I am happy to reshare your story and let more people know about what you're doing, your podcast. Thank you again for listening, and I will see you next time.